We've spoken about this before. Rules for one competition and not the same rules for another. The rescheduled Everton-Leicester match tomorrow is postponed for a second time. But at the weekend there in the FA Cup, not one game fell foul of the current times in which we are living. Is it not more of an argument, as I said in the introduction this morning, to have the same rules and postponements for the FA Cup across all competition? It would seem logical that's what it should be.
Because the league is played over 9 months with 38 games, and the FA Cup is a knockout tournament that has a window of time to complete itself in. So you do have to have an element of adjustability and flexibility based upon the principles of achieving a tournament that has 5 games in it or 6 games in it to win if you come in the third round, and you've only got a limited amount of time to complete it, whereas you've got a fixture list, not ideal because we've got other parameters like the World Cup that are influencing it that can be readjusted over 38 games over 9 months.
But so it's okay to play kids in the FA Cup but not in the Premier League?
No, it's in an ideal world you'd be able to do both. But the bottom line is that the Premier League has set down the blueprint for how first of all, it was very flexible, fast and loose. And the managers were saying, hang on a second, we don't know why games are being postponed, we want a directive. And they got a directive, and of course then what happened was a load of fixtures cancelled following after that, which is what I said would happen. In the FA Cup, they know they've got to complete this cup. They've already diminished by the Premier League.
They've got to complete the Premier League as well.
Sure, but the Premier League's got 9 months to complete itself. The FA Cup doesn't.
They're stacking up, Simon. They're stacking up. In the Premier League, for those who don't know, Danny, a match can be postponed if a club can prove they don't have 13 outfield players plus 1 goalkeeper available from their senior squad and a list of appropriately experienced under-21s. The experience thing doesn't come into it in the FA Cup. You can play kids.
The first part of it proves if the team can prove. How do you prove it? What do you do? How do you prove it?
How do you prove what?
The positive. Because, for example, Liverpool have had a load of false positives, haven't they? So there was only Trent Alexander-Arnold who's actually shown to be a true positive. So apparently they've had a lot of false positives, so all the players are back.
On lateral flow devices or PCR tests?
Well, it must be lateral flow.
But it's not just COVID, it's on injuries, it's on players going to AFCON as well.
My theory is the same. When you take away the detail, especially in the Premier League, the size of the squads, the quality of the academies, you get a team out.
Well, absolutely. But also there's another factor that's factored into the Premier League, which is the quality of the offering for the worldwide audience that effectively funds football. So when you're talking about a proposition that has quality attached to it, and you have a game that's underpinned and underscored by broadcasting revenues, and you're now at a stage where your overseas rights are almost as big as your domestic rights, the domestic rights will have a bit more tolerance because they'll know that the FA Cup or the Premier League is fraught with player changes or challenges that go on with player injuries and so on and so forth and fixture lists. The international audience goes, I couldn't give a monkeys. I pay to play the Premier League and watch the Premier League. If I see a substandard quality because you're putting kids out there, maybe I'm going to pay less money for the broadcasting rights.
But Simon, it seems like in the Premier League a game can go like that.
It does go like that, but it does seem to...
Because the quality aspect of it.
But what about the games that have been played where teams have asked for the game to be postponed and then all of a sudden a lot of their players are able to play? We've seen very few really weakened teams and very few poor games. It's amazing how the certain amount of players do end up okay to play.
I agree.
I mean,
no choice is the best choice.
Palace was the great example, wasn't it? Where they tried to get the game off against, was it Tottenham? And then they only had one player not available when they picked the team the next day.
Yeah. I mean, the FA, I think, went about it with the kind of approach that I think a lot of people around the country would like to see in the Premier League. Like, a safeguard against calling games off. Yes. Whatever you do, try and keep the fixture on. Okay. I mean, Danny Mills is in touch. What went on with Liverpool? Only one case of COVID called off the game?
But the Premier League did that.
He says, how do you go from 12 to 1?
The Premier League did that, right? It made a stance, which is basically... we will do it case by case with the distinct attitude of keeping every single game on. And then we had was a media onslaught, feeding the managers with an opportunity to keep on saying, we don't know what the games are being called off for or allowed to go on for. We've got no consistency. So the moment the Premier League said, right, okay, here's how it works, what then happened? A slew of games being cancelled because everybody knew what the managers were angling for, which was an opportunity to get what they wanted in the first place, which was a lot of the foreign managers looking at the fixture list over Christmas going, don't want that.
Doesn't suit you.
Surely as a manager though, Simon, at the drop of a hat you should be able to widen the net. You're talking about the best squads in the country, widen the net, getting whosoever to make sure the damn fixture doesn't go by the wayside.
Okay, but that's one argument. But the managers would have a different argument, which is we want to have the best availability of players. Certainly the elite managers, because they're trying to win leagues, they're trying to win positions in the league. When you've got people like Sean Dyche that look at what they've got and work with what they've got, what's his attitude? His attitude is, it is what it is. He's in a relegation battle. Right, yeah. So he has as much to play for as Liverpool have to play for, or Manchester United have to play for, or whoever else is amongst
the elites. So is he right? I think he's right.
So I think of course he's right. We all know he's right. But that's not the narrative that gets peddled out by certain aspects of the football mafia or the media. It becomes this dialed-in perspective that
media. What are you on about?
Well, because there is this idea that what you're saying now is completely different to what you're saying in a different discussion. If you're advancing the narrative that, i.e., these managers are right to have these views, because in this studio we're very robust. We push back against it and go, get on with it.
When they're powering through it in the FA Cup, why don't they power through it in the Premier League?
Because they've given them an out. What's happened is, Jim, they've given them an out. So the Premier League have given the Premier League clubs an out and a way to manipulate it. Now, I'm not saying they all have. I'm not saying they all have, but some have. Because it suits their fixture schedule to have certain games called off.
But also you've got this. Okay, again, go back to the point of narratives. We get the Arsenal Invincible in every Friday, constantly talking about player welfare, and you start that particular scenario, and it builds up and it gets layers put on it, and all of a sudden we're debating about the get on with it mentality. The get on with it mentality is dinosaurs, Jurassic people that don't play the game anymore in certain people's mindsets, when most people in life say we've all got to get on with it, except footballers. Apparently they can't get on with it. They've got to be constantly acquiesced to, and player welfare, and they've all got to be at a table, and we need a voice, and we're not listening to the right people.
No, but Simon, this is how ridiculous it is. How can Leicester play in the FA Cup at the weekend but not in the Premier League this week?
Because
Everton Leicester's now gone by the wayside tomorrow night.
Because they're two different tournaments, Jim.
They're making advantage.
But why does that matter?
Well, because the rules are different.
Because the rules are different for tournaments.
Just on that, can I just say,
widen them.
Jim, I don't believe, and this is what I've said on the show before, and I'm with Simon where he's going with the way he was talking about that in terms of the points he made. But I don't think that the huge majority of footballers, even now, think that they're being outdone by. I think they're happy to crack on and play and get on with it. I think there's a resilience in footballers that isn't transferred.
But they'll use it as an excuse.
The managers are using it as excuses more than the players. Very few players.
I'd agree with that, Sam. Danny's right.
I actually think players love a challenge generally. I actually think with the squad, some of them are
when they overcome it,
chomping at the bit because they're going to get more game time because they have to rotate a bit more. Over Christmas, I used to be part of squads where the more games, the lads were buzzing because the training went up because everybody think I might play because there's more games.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to lump all the players into this. They're all thinking they're being outdone by. I don't think they are. I think the majority get on with it and are happy to. I think what we listen to is the diatribe from a lot of the coaches and managers talking about player welfare, and they've forgotten what it's like to play.
You had your mate at Liverpool, Jordan Henderson, out on the front foot talking about player welfare.
But we talked
and
about
these are
that.
influential. No, I don't think they are, but they are because they're well-known names, so their voices carry more resonance than the average person that you're referring to wants to play.
But I think the captain was backing up his manager there, where really I don't think
See, other clubs are doing it. There's James saying, guys, Sunderland at the weekend kept their game on. 12 first-team players were out. They were missing.
They won at Wickham, didn't they?
But they managed to do it, and they managed to keep it going. So, I mean, Simon, but why don't Leicester say they can't do it? They can't get enough players together.
Well, hold on.
Because of COVID injury in the African Cup of Nations.
Under the rules that the Premier League have laid down.
But widen them out.
And the question is...
They could at the weekend.
Okay, the question is, why doesn't the Premier League have 5 substitutes and every other European team does? Because there's a different set of dynamics, right? And whether it's right or wrong, we're arguing from the same position that there should be a mentality of get on with it. But there is a very loud and vociferous set of people that suggest that this is not the way to look at it. Let's get on with it. It's said by people that don't know what they're talking about.
If you have a genuine wave of COVID go through the squad, including young lads, first team and staff, and it becomes nearly impossible to play and lessen the product, I think there's an argument to call off the game. But what's happening, of course, is there's a manipulation of the rules, which is what happens in life. Every set of rules are manipulated and pushed to the max.
Yeah. Tweak them.
So we can't say we don't know the Leicester situation completely. They might have had a massive surge of COVID problems in the squad. They might not. We don't know. So
and they've got injuries, but they've got an academy.
I think the Premier League have to put something in place that allows the postponement of a fixture if there's a genuine case of COVID. The problem you've got, Jim, is that, of course, and who wouldn't do it, you manipulate those rules to suit your own agenda. as a club.
Yeah.
Depending on your injuries, suspensions, depending on the fixture list.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.